It's really liberating to be in a place in my life where I'm like, you know what? Like me or don't like me, I can't control what you think about me. I can't control how much information you know about me. I can't control the biases you have against the things you do know about me. I can't control any of those things. I can control how I feel about myself. I can control how I present myself to the world. I can control how I'm a good human. And I think for me and for any kids listening, I think ultimately the internet, you're going to meet nasty, awful human beings and you cannot control them.
Representation is something that can make somebody feel so much more confident and powerful and feel like they have a community behind them, which they do. They just maybe don't have it in their local community. And that's something that social media has really opened the doors for. And it's a really, really powerful tool to be able to connect with other people.
We talk a lot about social media's impact on mental health, but we often miss how it rewires our most fundamental relationship, the one we have with ourselves. I've watched countless students who can solve advanced equations crumble when they compare their bodies to filtered images, or LGBTQIA plus teens who finally find community online only to feel pressured to perform a perfect version of their identity. These aren't just screen time issues, they're systemic wounds dressed in pixels.
And those wounds run deeper than we realize. In my work with first responders, I see the same pattern. A cop who won't seek therapy because toughing it out is just part of the culture. Or a teen who won't tell their parents about bullying because everyone just deals with it. The script is different, but the shame is identical. The belief that struggling means you're broken, not that the system is.
Exactly. As an educator, I've seen how schools accidentally reinforce this. A girl gets dress-coded for distracting outfits while boys face no consequences, internalizing that her body is the problem. Or a trans student hears just ignore the comments when reporting harassment, teaching them that their safety isn't a priority. These moments build the invisible curriculum, that you are what you are seen as.
And in my clinical practice, especially in marginalized communities, I've seen how systemic barriers like these algorithms that we'll talk about prioritize extreme content, or sometimes the therapists just don't understand the cultural beauty norms, leaving teens stranded. Eating disorders might go undiagnosed by providers, especially in kids with darker skin, or a first-gen immigrant parent might dismiss body image struggles as sheer vanity, not realizing that their child is drowning into the comparison game.
That's why this conversation isn't just about logging off. It's about asking, how did we get here? When a teen would rather starve than post an unedited photo, that's not a personal failure, that's a societal one.
Today, we're breaking down how to rebuild self-worth in a digital world. We'll cover several topics, including why who taught you to hate your reflection reveals a whole lot more than why can't you just be confident. Practical tools that short-circuit the comparison spirals, systemic traps from filter-fed dysmorphia to LGBTQ erasure that often keeps teens stuck. And lastly, how generational trauma lingers when parents pass down their own body shame and how to disrupt it.
Joining us today, who brings not only expertise, but also a deeply human touch to this work, we're honored to welcome Melissa Cervantes-Oporta, a licensed professional counselor who specializes in adolescent mental health, LGBTQIA plus support, and multicultural counseling. She's also the proud owner of Mochi, who is her assistant clinical cat, and we're hoping will do a guest appearance for us, who's occasionally makes guest appearance in her telehealth sessions.
And Melissa holds a master's in clinical psychology with specialization in clinical counseling and sex therapy, and her work spans supporting diverse communities from first-generation Americans to survivors of trauma. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Hi, thanks.
Thanks, Melissa. All right, so before we get started, there's something that we'd like to do with our guests, kind of like an icebreaker. So if you haven't heard, I'm on a mission to destigmatize the human experience. #BeHuman. What we do is we share one dealing with or about that has happened to us this week that kind of made us feel or go or do something, feel a little bit uncomfortable in some way, right? So if you have a human moment that you've experienced that you wouldn't mind sharing with us, if it's maybe something with Mochi or work, if you wouldn't mind, we would love to hear it.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, first, I want to say thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited. And I knew you were going to ask this question because I've listened to your podcast before, and I was trying to think about what I was going to say. And then, of course, something happened today. So I work in a Latin-based mental health field where we have over 40 people who are bilingual, and most of them are from a Latin country. So it's very common in Latin countries to greet each other by a hug and a fake kiss on the cheek. Well, today I had a meeting with the regional director and I went in for that side hug and fake kiss and I almost stood face first. Oh my goodness, it was very embarrassing. We had to do a quick little maneuver to get it out of the way. But yes, that was my human moment.
One of the things I used to teach kids is call it out when you do those types of things where you're just like, well, that was weird. I just tried to make out with you and like, make a joke out of it and try to move on. And I remembered Melissa mine, and actually it's kind of similar to yours. I was having a little bit of a hard morning. I slept in a hammock outside with my children last night. I'm going to say it was due to lack of sleep. And so I went into Starbucks this morning and I saw my best friend. And it was like one of those, when you're like, I'm keeping it together, I'm keeping it together. And then somebody asks, how are you doing? And you're like, no. It was one of those where I was like, God, why did you have to be here? I would have kept it totally together if you had not been here, best friend. And again, I did the same thing with her where I made a joke where I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is my human moment right now. All right, so we're going to go ahead and let's get started. If you could just tell us a little bit more about your journey, how your multicultural background and work with the LGBTQIA plus community has shaped your approach to body image, social media, like really anything mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am Latina. I was born in California and by a Mexican and Nicaraguense parent. They got divorced, and my mom married a woman from Puerto Rico, and my dad married a woman from Colombia. So I was raised with a lot of different Latin cultures and also within the LGBTQ plus community. So that in itself really shaped the way that I see the world. And I see that more as normal, where I realized that not everybody sees that as quote unquote normal. So my background in clinical psychology with sex therapy is really about everything that has to do with sex in a sense. So it could be relationships, it could be abuse, it could be a variety of things, anything doing with sex. So that really helped me see more of the clinical side of sex therapy and working. And immigration and with first generation Americans, as well as with individuals who are experimenting and learning about their sexuality with an LGBTQ plus community. Growing up in the digital world has been very, very interesting. I think that every day there's a new platform and a new word and a new trend that's going on that I have to catch up on. So um, having clients that are constantly telling me about these things has been really, really helpful for me to be in the know of what's going on. So that's a little bit about my background.
I love the learning from your clients. Like, I love that.
No, I mean, I can relate. I felt like I was way cooler when I taught middle schoolers because they kept me in the know about all the trends. And I
Yes,
truly do think
exactly.
most trends come from middle schoolers. Like, I know we think we're all creating trends. We're not. It's the middle schoolers.
It's them.
But I was going to say, I'm really excited about this conversation because we don't actually usually talk about sex, but it's a huge part of mental health. I think it's a huge part of our humanity. I think that it's a very controversial topic right now where we're trying to figure out, like, how do we make sure that we're, sex positive, but also keeping people safe and, we know the consequences and it's a very interesting, relevant conversation right now. Again, it's something that is very, um, relevant to mental health. I don't think that people tie it to mental health very often, but I think it is the cause of mental health challenges. I think it's the cause of lots of complexities and various dynamics in our lives. I think it takes any relationship from something to something else, and that makes it very complicated. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add to that, it also relates a lot to social media. Sex sells in social media, and that drives a lot of attention from our young people.
Although I would push back, I think right now on social media, it feels kind of like bigotry sells. Like the algorithms are very much like going into sex sells into something else that's not as great that's selling.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, a 2024 study found that teens with high social media use, I'm sure there's some opinions in the room on that, reported lower body satisfaction scales or scores. In your work with LGBTQ youth,
Like, do you find that in the LGBTQIA and multicultural clients that there is a high or low body satisfaction in your work? Like, do you feel like the social media components are impacting them or negatively? I mean, And I will just kind of like bridge that in that I find a lot of like the queer kids that I work with or teens or young adults that I work with are super body positive. So like they're less impacted, I think, because they, I think, have gotten to this like frontal lobe possibly in different parts of their lives earlier. So like they're like, I'm going to love me for me. I'm not going to go down that. But I do think that it does impact all humans ultimately. So I guess that's the question that Darren's trying to ask is like, what does that look like in that community that you work with?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I am very split on this, I would say. Just because I think there's a lot of validation that can come from social media, especially those who come from maybe smaller communities. And if they are part of the LGBTQ plus community, they get to find a community online.
Representation matters. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and they get to find that even though they're from a small town or whatever it may be. So I think in that sense, it is very helpful for their self body image and acceptance. And there's so much acceptance in that world. However, at the same time, there is a side where we're looking for validation, maybe asking for feedback, getting really nasty comments. So getting negative feedback from people, as well as um, whenever there's one person that's idolized in a sense, then we think that our sexuality, if we're a lesbian, we have to look like this or we have to portray ourselves this way, and then we can get self-conscious about that. So that's what I've noticed with my clients a bit is they can lean on either side. They feel very accepted or they feel that they're not exactly that mold that they think they should be.
I agree. I mean, from my perspective as an educator, I would say that just like any other community, it impacts them in ways that are really great and positive, and then ways that are really detrimental and harmful. I do think it looks a little different in that community than it might look in your straight white community for sure.
So many teens struggle to distinguish edited from authentic content. Super agree. How do you help clients, especially those navigating cultural and gender identity, recognize these unrealistic standards?
That is a great question. And the biggest thing right now is just psychoeducation and just education in general on what is AI and the power of AI. And to be completely honest, I don't even think I understand the full power of AI. And the things that are coming out now where you can see full videos are completely made up that looks so real. So this is something that I would say that I'm still learning and educating as I learn. But the biggest thing I would say is just educating the kids about what is AI and the power of AI, and thinking more about what does this video or picture make me feel rather than determining if this is real or not.
I also think, like, for me, I constantly come back to confirmation biases. I mean, I think that if I was to tag one of the concepts that we're seeing at the greatest mass right now, is we are all seeking confirmation biases, right? Like, I have determined this is the case with a trans person. I'm only going to, like, see the things that really confirm what I believe, right? And so part of me is like, we need to just really educate on confirmation biases and what this means. And then same thing with cognitive dissonance, right? Like, I always used to say as a teacher, my job is not to be the keeper of all information anymore. Like you all, everyone has access to information at their fingertips more than I can teach. But we should be teaching our kids and the next gen to really understand how to be resourceful, how to be analytical, how to look for things that would be clues to fake information or fake pictures to whatever. And honestly, we're only at the beginning of this AI journey. So it is going to get exponentially more challenging. But then we also have so many like financial people who are feeding into so much of our technology and our algorithms. So it almost even feels like what's the point of educating ourselves and becoming knowledgeable when we have no control over it anyway? And it's all just going to continue to like, you know what I mean? Be poured into our brains. It's wild. It is a crazy time to
Yeah.
be alive because it's really hard to tell what's real and not.
I loved what you said though, just a second ago. Like, it doesn't honestly matter if it's real or not. Like, what do you do with what you
Now
just
what?
were exposed to? Yeah, now
Mm-hmm.
what? Like, okay, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
We can determine if it's real or it's not real. That's not actually the point. It's like, what's that do to me, my concept of
But
self?
it also goes back to, like, how your brain works, right? And it's also, like, where are you processing the information? You know, we are such emotional beings innately. We oftentimes ignore recognizing our emotions, but we really are emotionally tied to things and how we react and what we engage in. And so a lot of times we're here and not here when we're seeing those things, which is making us draw all of the wrong conclusions, right? And so I think, I go back, I don't even know. The solution to this problem is always education. I'm going to keep saying that. We need to educate people on how our brains work. We need to educate on confirmation bias and cognitive dissonance.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree. And I think to that, to your point about the algorithm reinforcement is so powerful that they can catch on to what are the things like TikTok, I know, has whenever you look at a video, you press on the comments, it tells you what's the most commonly researched thing from that video. So if that's something that you also caught on to in that video and you click that, now you're going to get fed with a lot of information of why is this person so thin or how did they lose so much weight or whatever it is. And now the algorithm's going to feed you these things that really attack you and what's going to get you to stay on.
Okay, I'm going to share a very trigger story. Darren, I know, has heard this story, but this is so relevant to what you're talking about, Melissa. And I'm sure listeners who follow have heard this story before. But one of the reasons I went from for-profit to nonprofit is I had a student who was part of the LGBTQIA community and was also not white in a very white community, unalive themselves. It was actually almost 2 years ago to the day. And their friend joined us in this work at one point, and their friend said to me, Erin, I need you to understand that student was self-harm. Like, they started to look up self-harm stuff and the algorithms took over, and the algorithms within weeks was just 100% self-harm, and it overtook their whole little, I mean, they were summer before 8th grade, so very underdeveloped frontal lobe, still a baby, took over their entire being, and then they ended up not alive, right? I don't think we understand the power of algorithms yet at all. I really don't. And honestly, I think it changes every day. And I was actually just having a talk with somebody else on our team this morning about, if they're going to tell us all of these DEI words are not going to work in our algorithms anymore, how do we get out mental health stuff if they're controlling what the algorithms do and do not see and what, how it all works, what will put you in a good bucket versus a bad bucket versus, whatever. How do we make sure we are still doing this work, promoting LGBTQIA mental health, access to things, equitable things, diversity, when they're literally triggering the algorithms to do the exact opposite? It feels like a really endless uphill battle. And it's hard to not think about the kids ultimately at the end being most impacted by this.
Yeah, it's a big change. It's interesting to go through it, but it is a little scary to think about the power and what's to come in the future and how do we adjust. And we have to adjust very quickly because things are changing very quickly.
Well, and where we're doing things in certain parts of the country or the world, some parts of our world are literally like AI algorithms are on lockdown and they're doing nothing with it until they understand it. And here we're like, let's just open it all up and let's make sure everybody has access, even though we don't understand it.
I'm going to keep us going here. How do you differentiate normal teen self-consciousness from something more serious like body dysmorphia disorder?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. So that's something that's very normal for teens, right? To be self-conscious about certain things and the pressures. We start to learn about our bodies. It's fun times, fun times. But I would say what makes it different from a disorder like body dysmorphic disorder would be the intensity, the frequency, the processes that go behind the scenes of these thoughts. So it's very normal to be insecure about a blemish on our face. It's not, I would say it's more of abnormal or something that we should get some more help with if we constantly have to be in front of a mirror to check this blemish to the point that we don't want to go to school because we need to make sure that we're checking on this blemish, or it's affecting our relationships. We don't want to see people. We don't want to hang.
All consuming.
The obsessive nature.
Absolutely. It adds maybe other disorders.
Okay, but I have to come back to LGBTQIA community, right? Because how, that internal conflict, I think, is really intense in those bodies and those beings, because you feel like the world has told me this is not right. This is not what's natural. So I have to constantly push back against what I see as myself versus what the world sees as myself. And so how do we figure out for those kids that right place to land, right? Because I just feels like it's all kids go through this. All humans feel insecure. But when the world's telling you you don't belong because of these things, how do you find that middle ground of like, I mean, I think bravery and lots of mental health. Um, do you have tips and tricks or things that you kind of help people to work through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a really tough space to be in when we start to internalize as I'm not good enough, or I'm not a good person, or I shouldn't do certain things because of the way that my body is not matching what I feel. And so what I focus on is more of what's that core feeling that we're having of not feeling good enough or not feeling like we belong. How can we work on that feeling? Not so much so our body is just a representation, we're just walking in it, but what do we feel inside that's making us feel those intense feelings? So, again, it's very, I would say it's a little bit different for LGBTQ plus community, because it's not just a blemish. It could be a body part that we feel this way, or it could be being accepted in the clothes that we like to wear, but maybe other people don't like us to wear.
Hmm.
It is really more of accepting and loving us for who we are, or finding, what I like to focus on is strength-based, right? So looking at what their strengths are, what do they really love about themselves, and let's really lean into that. So whenever we have a negative comment on Instagram, or somebody said something, yes, this person may not like the way that I decide to dress, but I love that I'm an amazing human and that I have a really big heart and that I'm really caring and I'm very creative and I love to be expressive with who I am, right? So I like to focus more on that strength part and really, really have that as their base. So then we can work through these other things that we don't feel so secure about.
Or even, like, not working through them, but saying, "I can't control the things," right? Like, I can shrink and this has been I mean, I'm 40, so I've had a lot of years to work through this, but it's really liberating to be in a place in my life where I'm like, "You know what? Like me or don't like me, I can't control what you think about me. I can't control how much information you know about me. I can't control the biases you have against the things you do know about me. I can't control any of those things. I can control how I feel about myself. I can control how I present myself to the world. I can control like how I'm a good human." And I think for me and for any kids listening, I think ultimately like the internet, you're gonna meet nasty, awful human beings and you cannot control them. And that is my best advice to y'all is just focus on what you can control. It gets you so much further in life.
So I've got a name here. I'm not familiar with who it is. Maybe y'all can help me. Influencers like Eugenia Cooney promote extreme ideals. How can parents address this without villainizing some people, but especially if there's like part that identifies in similar ways and there's other ways. So first of all, who is that? Help me.
Yeah, Eugenia Cooney she is a influencer who does a lot of makeup and fashion. Um, she's a very it seems to be kind-hearted person online. However, her body, what people comment about her body on social media is a lot about anorexia or eating disorders, because of the how her body looks online. And, there's been moments in social media where it appears she's having some medical issues within the video, and so there's a lot of assuming going on in the comments, and attacking on her and her mother for not giving her the help that the
They
commenters
believe.
believe that
Yeah.
she should be getting, right?
So what do parents do with that? Like if their kids, and this is an individual, but I'm sure this is not an isolated incident. What do we do with this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it really depends on the age of the child, and how they stumbled upon this and what their initial thoughts are when they see the video. So I think knowing what that child is feeling or thinking about, then navigating that way. So if the child is thinking the same thing that the comments are, I think it's important to shed light on that. There's so much more behind the screen that we don't know, that we don't see, and that it's not our space to assume or judge, that person, right? So just because we see something doesn't mean it's true. Again, going back into the psychoeducation or just education in general about what's online, there's things such as rage bait, which is doing things just to get a reaction out of people, right? So there's so many different things that this situation could be that it's not our place to really assume, and instead going back to the strength. So if this child knows that their strength is having a big caring heart, how can we provide some love and care for this person? Whether that's through prayer or through sending positive thoughts or sending a little heart emoji, whatever it is, again, depending on the age, making an age appropriate conversation, but allowing them to kind of get to that conclusion themselves so that they feel really powerful in the way that they've approached it, not the way we told them to.
I also think, like, this is something I always used to say in the classroom, and I think that in this day of, like, you can literally find information about anything, we have to teach our kids that, like, you do what's right for you. Don't judge other people's lives, right? Like, my daughter the other day was talking to me about her friend. She was like, "My friend is actually really nice lately. She used to be not so nice, and now she's, like, a lot nicer." And I'm like, "Bean, it's not our job to, judge her. Like, I don't know what was happening in her life when she was not nice. I don't know who her friends were. She goes to a different school. Like, all of these components could have been drawing her to make those not so kind things. But, like, let's, recognize where she is now and how she's showing up. And, I think it's really hard for adults to do this work too, obviously. But I think, live and let live and help our kids to understand the best thing we can do in our lives is do what's best for us. Kids would come in and curse and stuff like that in the classroom. And I'd be like, okay, well, that's their home culture. I curse at my home too. I tell my kids, though, you better not curse on the rug at school. Otherwise, we're going to have bigger words to discuss. But, it's finding that balance of, like, I always use a gum analogy. As a teacher, I don't think we should be saying no gum in the classroom, but how do you be responsible with that gum? Same thing with bad words. Same thing with all of these hard decisions we have to make in life. I'm not here to judge you for how you choose your gum. I just need to make sure I'm being responsible with my gum, you know?
And not sticking it under the desk.
Yeah, don't do that, Darren.
So let's take it down more into like actionable stuff for parents. What's your first step talking with parent about my child's obsessed with this perfect look?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think if we go in looking at the multicultural aspect of it as well, I work with a lot of first generation Americans as the child and the Latin born country parent. And the differences are huge to American culture in some ways to Latin countries. And so there is a barrier there sometimes of cultural difference, and then we're looking at generation difference. There's a lot of different barriers here. So the first thing I would say is, are we listening, validating, understanding the child? They're saying things for a reason, right? And so it's important that the child feels heard rather than feeling lectured about something that they're going to think about whether we lecture them or not, right? So I would say first step is to listen and validate that if they are obsessed about a certain photo or a certain image or a certain body type, whatever it may be, acknowledging that is a really beautiful person, right? So I would say that would be the very, very first step is making that child feel heard and seen and understood that what there is some validity to what they're saying. It may not be the right way that they're saying it, or maybe they're not focusing on the right things within that image, but there is something in there that we can validate within that. So I would say that would be the very first step. And that's the first step as a clinician that I make sure that I do that they feel that I'm there and I'm listening and I'm trying to listen to understand, not so much listen to lecture and tell them not to do it.
I was going to say, I think the other thing too, for any adults listening with kids, I think it's super imperative that we remember that we all go through stages. I think that we are so quick to judge our teens, young adults, because they're wearing some sort of outfit or whatever. And then we look back, and actually, I had a very humbling #BeHuman moment in that I said something about, oh my gosh, that kid, I don't even remember, it was years and years and years ago. I had different views on things, but I was like, oh my gosh, that kid went to school wearing next to nothing, because as a teacher, it's really hard to sometimes battle that. And then somebody pulled up my senior year high school picture and they're like, oh, look at what you're wearing, Erin. I was like, oh, you are so right. I was once a kid and this is super humbling, right? And I just, like the trends change. So it's not maybe the same trend that we went through that looks different, feels different, sounds different, but it doesn't mean it's not, like, it doesn't mean it's them for forever, right? We still owe our children the opportunities to be able to explore themselves, to figure out what they want to wear, how they want to behave, what they morally align to. And that's part of the process is sometimes getting outside of our box that is comfortable for us and allow them to kind of explore that. And without judgment. And honestly, I think without judgment is so important because if you come to it with judgment, I was raised by a man who, when he says no, I absolutely do. I know for certain that if you come with judgment, they're going to push further the other direction. So if you just, I love my kid through and through, no matter what, and I'm going to support them. And this is maybe a phase. Maybe it's not a phase. Maybe it's for forever what they're going to wear. Okay. Are they going to be good humans? Are they going to survive this? Are they going to, really bring ourselves out of our own preconceived notions of what we think society is going to do or judge them for and allow them to explore?
Right, absolutely. I think that's a great point too, and that kind of made me think about understanding as a parent what is the reason that I'm saying what is the fear here, right? Because we might be associating something such as I don't know, a shorter skirt to something much more drastic in our lives growing up than what it actually means now.
So, Melissa, let me ask you, I think that so much of what we believe and what we perceive to be true is really stuff that is filtered through us and oftentimes not actually our real beliefs and things like that. But I think that representation matters. I know representation matters. I don't think that. We know that. What is your message to like tech CEOs about the LGBTQIA community, multicultural representation? I don't think we have enough. I don't think we're in a space in our country where we're going to see more. I think we could do better as far as like people who wear glasses versus people who don't, people who are able bodied versus people who have physical challenges, people who have invisible diagnoses, and how can we make them more visible so that we can destigmatize them? Um, what are your thoughts as far as I mean, I could probably predict, but do you feel like there's more need for it, less need for it? Do you feel like it's impactful? Do you feel like your clients relate to those things? Do you feel like we are going to change back into being able to see more representation in the future? Tell me where your thoughts are on all of that representation for your clients.
Yeah, yeah, that's really important, I believe. Representation is something that can make somebody feel so much more confident and powerful and feel like they have a community behind them, which they do. They just maybe don't have it in their local community. And that's something that social media has really opened the doors for. And it's a really, really powerful tool to be able to connect with other people. Do I think there's enough? No, I don't. I don't think that there's enough representation. I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done. However, I believe that we've made really big strides with representation, which is great. And for the CEOs that are doing um, or looking into how they can expand or what they should expand in, I would say, um, I don't know how else to say this, but to just educate yourself a little bit on it. Just learn about the different stories, learn about how powerful representation is and how that can
Maybe
change.
even within themselves, right? Because I think
Yes.
you have to
Yes.
start there, right? Like, I'm a white woman. So you might be like, oh, okay, whatever, representation, like, there's lots of it for her. Agreed, 100%. But there's like something about, like, oh, I saw somebody with glasses and it's subconscious, right? It's not something I'm consciously like, oh, they're wearing glasses. I'm drawn to them. But I'm going to tell a story. When I taught kindergarten, if you go to like actually, honestly, any kindergarten lunchroom, you will see the subconscious nuance really happening. And where if you put all the kids in one room, you will see them clumped together. So you will see the little redheaded kids sitting together, the kids with the glasses, the kids that speak Spanish, the kids that are shorter, the kids that are bigger, whatever it is, right? However they have been othered in society, they find each other without anybody telling them to. It is just what they're drawn to because it is comfort, right? So that is still very much where we have this discomfort in the adult world, though, because we don't understand that nuance in the adult world that we are drawn. I am drawn subconsciously more to Darren because he is white. I need to understand and recognize that so that I am not making my biases like the forefront of what I am doing. But we have to have that sort of awareness that this is an innate human behavior. It's not something wrong with us. It's not like I'm intending to like be racist by being drawn to Darren, but I need to be aware of it so that I can make sure. And I think that having representation is a really good way for us to understand so many of these nuances of humanity, and for all of those nuances of humanity to help our kids and the next gen feel seen, heard, understood, meaningful, impactful, and worthy of kind of doing this work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important. And even getting other leaders from other large social media platforms together to discuss how they can make this. I know that in leadership, it's a lot about business. It's a lot about how we make more money. And so, how can we include this and also make money in that?
Melissa, I love that you just said that. I'm going to answer that really quickly.
Please
Okay,
do.
I have really struggled with this whole like no DEI movement. And I keep, as a leader of an organization, I try really hard to, in my professional world, say how incredibly important and impactful DEI actually is for our bottom line. We should not make, in my personal opinion, we should not make professional decisions for the bottom line always. Sometimes we have to keep the lights on. I don't think we should be doing DEI stuff just to keep the lights on. However, I do think there is a very direct correlation because I am not selling my final product to just white men. So if all of the white men are sitting at my table and we are thinking through marketing strategies to curriculum to funding to whatever, we are only going to put out a product that is really talking to that demographic. I want a product that is going to speak to every single human on our planet. So for me, I have to have a seat at the table for every single person to make sure that our final product speaks to each of those people. I am doing that because I believe all humans deserve the access to mental health. However, if your goal is the bottom line, that also applies, right? If I am trying to make money and I'm not speaking to somebody like you as a woman who is part of the Hispanic community, I am missing out on possibly selling you. Again, I don't think that that should be our motivating factor, to be clear. I think we should do it because humans deserve it and it's best for their mental health to have this diverse, perspective. But I do think it actually does help the bottom line. And if we can get more CEOs and people who are making money decisions to see that, it is sort of a back entryway for us to still get the job done.
And something that I think that was very well said, and I completely agree. And I think that something in therapy that we always try to focus on is meeting people where they're at. So if the bottom line is where they're at, how can we do it that way and find the back loop around to kind of get what representation for other people?
I'll start to wrap us up here. So thank you, Melissa, for joining us today. Did the cat ever come around? Can he make an appearance with us?
He's
No?
locked
got the
up.
He's
voice.
gone. Okay.
He's in
I was
timeout.
trying to give him his moment, but thank you for your insights and in sharing that stuff with us. But before we wrap up, Aaron always has one question at the end. So Aaron, I'll let you go.
All right, if you could, Melissa, rewrite one societal rule about beauty standards on social media, what, especially for the LGBTQIA plus and the multicultural youth, what would it be?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, of course, I'm always thinking about feelings. So I would say the beauty standard would be more of, um, even though it's not something we can capture online, but how do we feel about ourselves, or um, how we represent, or whatever's our intention. I think that would be more of a beauty standard than what the image looks like or whatever it may be. So more so of how somebody carries themselves rather than what their hair looks like today. So we could rewrite one rule. It would be that the physical appearance is not nearly as important as how we feel and our intentions, because we may not make always the right decisions, but if our intentions are there and we're willing to learn and change, then I think that is really beautiful.
It has been such a pleasure having you on our show. If the listeners or viewers want to connect with you or learn more about your work, how can they do so?
That's a very important question. I am available on Instagram at Unity Counseling Institute, as well as unitycounselinginstitute.com, my website. So those are the best ways to reach me.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you guys so much. It's been an honor being here. Really appreciate it. It was a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And to anybody who is listening or watching, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on post notifications so you never miss an episode. If you're listening on your favorite podcast directory, please leave us a 5-star rating. Those ratings are really what's helping us to get our mission out, get our voices out, be heard, help some folks that are going through hard stuff. If you have expertise in mental health, education, social justice, or really just want to be on our show at all, feel free to email us at unplugged@undomindset.org with Undo Mindset as the subject line. We are always looking for voices just like yours to really amplify, give you a platform to speak your truth. And don't forget, share this episode with somebody who might find it helpful. Getting the word out is one of the best ways that you can really support our mission and help us grow. We appreciate you. Thank you for helping us help to make mental health accessible, equitable, and out there in large mass quantities. Thank you so much and take care.